So this foundering car will give you maximum driving pleasure and practicality combined for the euros that you spend. And we will focus on new cars in the Netherlands. So you will find a lot of similarities also in the other European Union type of countries, and perhaps even outside that, but it's focused now with the pricing in the Netherlands because I have to start somewhere and I'm living there. So what is the cheapest way to have fun? There are three cars to consider here. The cheapest brackets are approximately 20,000 euros or a little bit above, which are at this moment the Hyundai i10 N-Line. And why is that? They have all these three cars have a 1-liter 3-cylinder turbo engine. That's the lightest embodiment that Hyundai offers an engine in. So that's a good way to start. And also with the N-Line you still have some of those N type of fun. Especially because the i20N and the i30N are not being delivered or are limited to a great extent in the Netherlands. This is a good way to enter that region. Another car you could consider is the VW Up GTI, which is also a nice car and also has a 1-liter 3-cylinder engine. I don't like about that Up that they didn't make a good attempt because they didn't change the seats, for example, and it just feels a lot like Up with some details living on that GTI heritage, but not really. And if you only change the fabric of the car instead of the car itself, this is not something I would really like. But okay, still it's an easy way to go into the GTI bracket of VW. So I will give you that, and it's a fun car to begin with. Another car that you could consider is a little bit more pricey is Fiesta or Ford, and then the ST line, which combined with the 1-liter 3-cylinder turbo engine, that's also good. And that gives instead of that of the VW Up, which is 115, the N-Line i10 is about 100, and this is about 125 horsepower, but it's combined with a hybrid system which decreases the BPM tax, and the BPM tax is a carbon output tax, so CO2 tax, so to say. So that's beneficial because it also lowers the price then. And this is a nice car. You can get it in 5-door configuration. All those cars that I mentioned can be got in the 5-door configuration, which makes it practical, of course. So that's a good thing to consider as well. And then you go into the car that I really like. And why is that? The other three cars that I mentioned don't have disc brake at the back, and they're also quite heavy for what they are. But if you look at the Swift GTI, in the past was a very light car, and also Swift Sport were also a light car. But now they made a car that's even lighter than the earlier generation, which is the current generation Swift Sport, and I now have the hybrid version. Hybrid version decreases the BPM tax, of course, decreases fuel consumption, which is a benefit as well, and you save a little bit of the brakes because it will recuperate some energy instead of just wasting it in heat and brake dust. Another benefit is that you can also have more torque because the electric engine spools up in the lower RPM already. So you have a very nice car, very torquey, even more torquey per kilogram than the current Cooper S of Mini. So that saves a lot. That's a 2-liter turbo engine, which is considered quite powerful. Okay, but I'm sidestepping. That's there, and it only gives you a very limited amount of additional weight because it's a mild hybrid system. So instead of very heavy batteries and additional configurations that are needed for an electric conversion, especially the batteries, you have a very light setup. So even if some batteries go wrong, you can easily replace them because they are both light and perhaps also quite cheap. So that's the thing that I would consider. Another thing to consider is if you really want to go that more of a fuel economy style practical car which still has some driving fun, you could look at the Yaris. The Yaris hybrid especially, because that's not that costly in the Netherlands. You have an automatic system if you like that. 1.5 hybrid engine is quite good. You also have 115-ish horsepower combined with the electric engine, a lot of torque, and you can get them with some GR packages, which are offering good seats and also some details. So that could be something to consider. But that's sidestepping again. I would really recommend the Swissport because it's an extremely light car, and light is right in this case. So you will see this to the entire list that I will propose, not including the full electric cars that I will also mention some, and plug-in hybrid, because those batteries will just give additional weight. But the benefits with those cars is that you have lower BPM, so you get a lot of performance, a lot of car for your money. So then if you go to the higher brackets, the i20N is not delivered in the Netherlands, but in Belgium this could be the case to consider as well. We do have the Fiesta ST, which is a nice car in itself and comparable. So 1.5 liter turbo, 3-cylinder, which is very nice, good engine, about 200 horsepower, and in a similar price range you could also consider something that I would really recommend if you're only with 2 persons max, which is the Mazda MX-5, also known as the Miata or the Roadster, which is a very nice car. And even with the base engine, the 1.5 liter engine, you will have a lot of fun. And why is that? The 1.5 liter is quite revvy and you don't need that much for, especially because it is also cabrio. So you can still enjoy the weather. It's the lightest car, it's the cheapest car of the MX-5 range, and still a very nice way to start. Of course, 2 liter with 186 horsepower would be a lot nicer. Okay, that being said, we can move on. If you go into the more expensive range, I would recommend plug-in hybrids. And you can look at Volkswagen Audi group for that, but also at BMW and Mini. They have very nice plug-in hybrids. So for the VW, Audi, Seat, Skoda types, they have a 1.4 liter turbo petrol engine combined with a plug-in system, electric engine, and then you can have about 200 horsepower, even up to 225, something like that, which is enough. If you're interested in Seat, you can even go for the Cupra, which looks fantastic in many details, and it's not that much more pricey than the Seat version, and often has a little bit access to the RS GTI type of performance that is not accessible for Seat anymore. And I would recommend the station wagon version of the lightest configuration, so that would be Golf, Skoda, Skoda Octavia, station wagon again. In RS configuration, I would really recommend it. And then you also have the same with, for example, Seat with the Leon ST, or the better still Cupra Leon, Leon Cupra station wagon. But those are the things to consider. But also very interesting is, in my opinion, the Mini Countryman. And why? I would never promote it. I like the Clubman a lot more because you get a lot more room, or the regular Mini, but they don't come with the plug-in variety, which the Countryman has. And that means BPM is reduced enormously, and therefore you get a lot more fun and other benefits for your car. Also, Countryman is one of the highest cars in my list, so you could consider that also if you want to have a car that is sits a little bit higher, easier to access if you are older, for example, or have some limitations there. Still a very nice, funky looking car which you could consider. And all of these cars are around 40,000 euros, up to 50,000 euros in the more expensive versions. And for that price you could also get access to the BMW 320e. So this is the smaller nephew of the 330e, and yeah, that's a lot cheaper to access, of course. 330e is better, but once you tune them, the difference is not that much anymore. So if you're already knowing that you will tune them, and they are both very tunable, I would really recommend also the 320e, which is easier to access, and also in the estate version, station wagon. So those are some recommendations. You could also go for the Audi A3 Sportline, which sits a little bit between the station wagon and the regular hatchback. So it could be, if you like the Audi brand a little bit more, but I would recommend Leon and Golf variant, Leon ST Golf variant, and the Octavia Estate above that, because they offer you a lot more room. So those are some cars to consider. Also, if you're looking at the extreme low price bracket, you could also consider a turbo engine, 1.2 liter turbo engine in the Dacia. So with Dacia you get a tremendous value for your money, and if you want an estate but you're strapped for cash, you could also look in that region, and then you would be approximately, with the Logan and Fabia, you will be very well off, far below 20,000 euros. So that might be the best bet in an extreme low budget. Of course, you get also less technology advancement, but something to consider. Going back in the higher brackets, so 50-60,000 euros, you could look for the 330e in a base spec, or a Golf R type of car, but those are already getting to the higher bracket, so they are not attainable at the price level. So up to 60,000 euros, there's only one candidate that's really very interesting, but it's not. You will not be able to get one anymore, I think. It's a Yaris GR. So the Yaris GR is an homologation special of the Yaris. The Yaris normally is a 5-door, and the GR is a 3-door. So it also has a lowered roof line specifically only for this car, which makes it very expensive for what you are getting. But why do I recommend it then, if you want a lot of bang for your buck? If you are going to resell them because they are so limited, you will have very low deduction of value over time. So you can compensate a little bit there. And also it's the lightest incarnation where you can get that extremely nice 1.6 3-cylinder of Toyota with 260-ish horsepower and 4-wheel drive, which is very fantastic. You are not getting the GR Corolla, which is a pity, otherwise it could also be considered. And for that price range you could also consider the Civic Type R, which is also a very nice 5-door car with extremely good performance and nice driving characteristics, and also good quality. A little bit above that, so 60 to 70,000 euros, I would recommend Alpine A110, which is a very light car, which is also tremendous special flavor. It only seats 2, so like the MX-5, it is a nice car to consider. In my opinion, nicer than its rival, which is also more perfected, the Cayman of Porsche. So I already walked through quite a lot of cars, but also in this price bracket, and this is quite silly in my opinion, the long-range Model S of Tesla is also sitting in the price range between 60 and 70,000 euros, and offers you 500, or even now in the latest incarnation, 600 horsepower and a 0 to 100 of 3.2 seconds, which is McLaren F1 territory. Can seat up to 7 person and has the same room inside of it as the A6 Estate. And this is the car to get. Also it has a yoke steering wheel, you can love it or hate it, but it feels a lot more special than the little brother, the Model 3 or the Model I, which are more modern in the earlier version, but now the Model S has a facelift and has been developed again, and I think that's where your Tesla money should go, instead of the lesser varieties. So you get an enormous amount of room, you get a special type of car, 600 horsepower on tap. You can have similar performance in the Model 3 Performance, and which is also a little bit lighter, but has less horsepower and a similar price almost. So it's not that big of a difference in my opinion. If you go for the lower version of the Model S, they could compete, of course, with the other cars that I mentioned, and could be a better bet than, for example, the Type R of Civic, and the Yaris GR that I mentioned before. So a baseline Model 3 or Model 3 long range is enough money for your buck. Not enough performance for your buck, in my opinion. Also, all those performance versions of Tesla, you have to switch some buttons to go and get them into this performance mode, which is not that nice. So this is the first part of the series. I will stop it now and we'll come back to it later.